Hello everyone, I'm Jim Longworth and welcome to another edition of Forsyth County Connections, coming to you from the studios of Cable 2, courtesy of the good folks at Winston-Salem and Forsyth County Schools. We appreciate their hospitality. And we have a jam-packed half hour, lots of information, great guests coming your way in a wide range of topics, so I hope you'll stick with us. Where we want to start though is talking about COVID and perhaps, I'm going to say this again, perhaps for the last time on this show, because local officials, state officials, federal officials have been talking about how the pandemic is over. Mayor Alan Joines, Winston-Salem, said that as well. With us now is our good friend Joshua Swift, Public Health Director for Forsyth County Department of Health. Welcome back.
Hey, glad to be here.
I just said what everybody's saying. What's your assessment?
Well, obviously the federal emergency is going away on May 11th. But we still have COVID in the community, but when you look back over the last 3 years at where we were and where we are, feel very confident that we are through the worst of this. People are still getting COVID, but with vaccine availability and the knowledge that we have now, we're in a much better place.
Joshua, what's the future of COVID, and should we be concerned with weather changes this fall as it starts getting colder?
Well, there's obviously always a possibility. Every fall we call that cold and flu season in my business. So we're looking at that, and people get those viruses. We're seeing other things like RSV, things like that. So that is definitely a concern every year.
Are you concerned about the new variants?
Well, so the way the variants work is what will happen is you'll hear of a new variant that'll come on board. It'll just be a small percentage, and it'll quickly take over.
Right.
But usually the net sum of the number of cases doesn't really change. It's just the type of variant.
Yeah.
Each variant has some different symptoms, but I don't foresee any new variants taking over that will greatly increase the numbers. But obviously, as 70% of our total population is vaccinated. Right. 95% of the 65-year-olds and older are in the county.
95% of 65 and over are vaccinated. I think that's great.
So that is great. But as we get further away from those initial vaccinations, it's important that people get those boosters as they're eligible, and just as other variants come on board.
Yeah, I was getting ready to ask you, how do we protect ourselves going forward, especially older people and those who are at highest risk? What's your advice? I know you said get boosters, but what should we do?
Well, so basically, if it's been over 4 months since you had a booster, you are eligible. And I would especially tell individuals that are 65 and older or who are immune compromised. This could be someone who's having cancer treatments, their health makes their immune system compromised, that they need to get a booster. Keep up to date on those boosters. There's been some changes with that, but that's very important as you go forward. I don't think people need to necessarily wear a mask. You may choose to if you're on an airplane, if you're on a bus, if you're in a crowded environment. That's your choice.
Social distancing?
Yes and no. It just depends. I don't think we need to make plans to change our holiday gatherings or birthdays and events. But one thing I would tell people, and this is something we used to say before COVID, if you're sick, it's probably best to stay home.
Well, that's just a common sense thing. When I grew up in the 50s, that was supposed to be common sense. If you had a cold, you stay home from school.
Yeah.
And people, I think, lost some of that common sense about them when COVID came and started panicking. And because if you had kept apart, far enough apart from everybody, it might have been different. You talked about being on airplanes. What about large crowds of people you don't know? If you feel like you're at high risk, it's still okay to wear a mask and do some social distancing, right?
Yeah, it's still okay. Also, it depends on where the large event is. If it's in a large convention center or an outdoor festival, that's probably not as big of a risk as if you're in a very tight, packed space.
And the boosters, will they help with variants? So if somebody's 70 or 75 years old and they say, I want to go to the pharmacy or a doctor to get a booster, is that going to help with new variants?
Yes, that will help. But obviously, as newer variants come on board, then there'll probably be new. They'll adjust the vaccine accordingly.
All right, up on screen, just a website I wanted people to see, co.forsyth.nc.us/public health, and then I'll give you some more updated information. Joshua Swift, I hope you'll come back sometime, and hopefully not to talk about COVID, but always have an invitation. Good to see you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, we'll be right back after this.
Help emergency responders help you when you can't help yourself. Forsyth Cares, the Community Assistance Registry for Emergency Services, allows you to register yourself or someone in your household sharing health conditions or information that might aid in your care should your home be the subject of a 911 call.
911, what's your emergency?
Operators will seek critical information, medications, conditions, or in the case of a wandering child or an adult with cognitive disabilities, places they like to go, or even if they have access to a vehicle. The information is stored in a database only accessible to first responders and 911 agents. Get more information at forsyth.cc/Forsyth Cares. In the moment that your life depends on a fast response, get information to first responders that can aid in your or your loved one's care. That's forsyth.cc/Forsyth Cares.
Back now for Forsyth County Connections, and we're going to spend a few minutes talking about mental health in a very specific location and serving people who might be in need. And we do that with a very special guest. Shela Williams-Stacy is Mental Health Director for Forsyth County Law Enforcement Detention Center. Thanks for coming down.
Thank you for having me.
I read where over 50% of people incarcerated in a correctional facility have some kind of a mental health issue. Now, when I read that, I guess it was a national statistic. Is that the case in Forsyth County, and if so, why?
Well, so in Forsyth County, we certainly have a very high number of people who are living with a mental illness. And there's also a lot of people that come through the detention center that have been undiagnosed and for the first time are diagnosed and treated for their mental illness. Our people with severe mental illness, a lot of times they come back to the jail over and over again because of their symptoms and because of their difficulty in reaching out and connecting with the services that are available to them.
Give me an example of how that might happen. I'm interested in that.
Well, unfortunately, some people's symptoms cause them to do things that are not, that cause them to break the law.
Yeah.
And, they end up arrested and, in the detention center for that reason. And because they were not medicated at the time or they were not treated, they were really acting outside of what was their typical.
And initially, police officers and folks, you don't know why something's prompted that. But I mean, once they're in the detention center, how do you identify if someone might be in need of some mental health care? How does that identification process work?
So everybody who comes to the detention center is eligible for mental health treatment, and in the detention center, they determine through intake, through the booking process. They do a screening with the intake nurse, and that person determines whether or not there's any medical or mental health needs. And then they refer them to the appropriate care team. And in the process of that, we will see somebody, but also throughout their stay at the detention center, there are opportunities for people to either identify themselves as needing some assistance, or also detention center and medical staff are trained to notice mental health symptoms and let us know when they're needing assistance.
Absolutely, to be observant of that. Now, what types of mental health programs are offered at the detention center?
So we really offer work on the spectrum. There are some people that just kind of like you and I may go through periods of depression or anxiety, difficulty sleeping, grief and loss, just a whole host of things. And we help them with coping strategies to be able to better deal with those things while they're incarcerated. We also have our people with severe mental illness that receive medication management and more targeted coping skill development. And then we have crisis intervention for those people who we provide daily monitoring for people who are at risk for suicide or self-harm behaviors or even harm to other people.
Now, what about something I think you sent me in an email was that you categorized it as specialized care. What do you mean? What do you mean?
So if somebody has a diagnosis such as schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, there's coping strategies and medication management that works specifically to target those types of symptoms.
Right. It's one thing and it's comforting, I think, to know, and for families to know that you're offering these services. But I guess playing devil's advocate, I say to you, well, wait a minute, Shela, this is a short-term thing, and once the person is released from the detention center, what about, how are you connecting them with community resources or are places they need to get help, I mean, what happens?
So we have discharge planners for that purpose, and they work with people on their release plan. And release planning is a really important part of what we do there. It helps us bridge the gap between community and the jail. And we do things like refer people, if they're on mental health medications, we refer them for 14 days worth of medication post-release at a local community pharmacy.
Trying to help the transition.
Correct. And we also help get them set up with services in the community. There's just a huge number of resources that are available within Forsyth County and neighboring counties that we help get people connected to in order to be able to better cope while they're in the community.
Well, Shela, I appreciate what you and your team are doing. It's a vital service, it's important, and I think it's making a big difference, and thanks for doing this.
Not a problem.
All right. We'll be right back after this.
Emergencies happen. Every home needs an emergency kit. Are you ready? Start with a large suitcase. They're mobile. For safety and security, pack extra clothes, matches inside a waterproof container, a first aid kit and manual, flashlight, and battery-powered radio and extra batteries. For nutrition, your kit should contain a 3-day supply of non-perishable food, kitchen utensils like a manual can opener. For hygiene, pack hand sanitizer, soap, bleach, and toilet paper. For financial matters, have these important documents: photocopies of identification, insurance policies, credit cards, cash and coins. For health, prescription medications, glasses, and hearing aids. For your mental health, consider a simple board game. Your kid should match your family. It may be different if you have an infant, seniors, or pets. It may even vary from one season to the next. Update the kit whenever we roll the clocks forward in the spring and back in the fall. You can see other examples of what you may want in the kit at readyforsyth.org. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at readyforsyth.
Back now on Forsyth County Connections, and we're going to shift gears a little bit, talk about 4-H, talk about STEAM classes. What is that, you say? We're going to find out about it with this expert. Jeffery Cates is with us. He's Program Assistant for Urban Agriculture and Agricultural Literacy Program Assistant, North Carolina Cooperative Extension here in Forsyth County. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
By way of the Chicago Art Institute and many other things, a lifelong educator, and it's really good to be able to interview you. What is, I mentioned 4-H. Describe to people what that is in case they don't know. What is 4-H?
4-H is a part of North Carolina Cooperative Extension. North Carolina Cooperative Extension is a state-level organization that disseminates the research that comes out of the land-grant universities, NC State, NC A&T.
Right.
And 4-H is a youth development program within that.
And you say youth, what's the target audience of youth for 4-H?
We serve ages 5 to 18, and roughly 6 million youth are equipped with life skills through that program.
That's just amazing, yeah, and it's been around for a long time. Now, I talked about STEAM. People have known the term for some time now, STEM, because of the acronym there. What do you mean by STEAM, and why is there an A in there?
Well, science, technology, engineering, math, these are all languages of how the universe works.
Right.
And it is a misnomer that these exist in silos, that they exist separately. We know that they work hand in hand, and we see them exercised or demonstrated throughout the universe together. And art is the apex of those languages. If you think back to the Renaissance, artists like Leonardo da Vinci were polymaths.
Right.
They studied all these different languages together.
Everything was interdisciplinary. And now what would STEAM programming look like for kids that get involved under your tutelage? I see there's 3 sweet potatoes on the table. I don't know if folks can see it. We have a video of this, and there's looks like some wire leads or something. What was that an example of?
This is an example of demonstrating to youth a concept of atoms. So how do atoms work? How is that the structure of everything from stars to plants to people? And so we would talk about that concept with youth, and then we would talk about electrons and the concept of electricity. That electricity is really just the movement of electrons from one atom to another.
This is fascinating. Using vegetables, which is, you never think of 4-H, but you're using vegetables to teach science.
Right.
That's just amazing. Where are your classes offered?
They are offered in schools, after-school programs, and in public institutions like library system.
All right, now what's next for the program if you look to the future of where you want to take it, where it's going? What does the crystal ball tell you?
Well, I think what we are focusing on right now is our summer programming. And if someone wants to take some courses offered by Cooperative Extension, they're available through the library's publications, the library's websites, and through our website, forsyth.cc/CES.
All right, I want you to say that again slowly so people say it again where they can get more.
Forsyth.cc/CES for Cooperative Extension Service.
How do you, in general, and I know you're a big believer in all this, but I mean, how do your classes benefit students? Well, not just short term, but long range.
All of our curriculum is research-based, based out of the research that's coming out of these universities. It also aligns with the core standards that are being taught in the schools. So these are scientific principles that students and adults need to know. And so having these things reinforced is really important to their understanding of the universe. But one of the key things about 4-H that we believe very strongly in is experiential learning. So it's not just talking about an idea or looking at really well laid out diagrams.
Right.
But it's putting your hands on something that you can do yourself. And so through making mistakes and through coming through how to problem solve, students can learn through that experiential method.
Well, you just uplifted me, and in terms of what's in store for the future and the students that you're bringing along, because they really need that. And Jeffrey, I appreciate all you do.
My pleasure.
All right. We'll be right back after this.
Don't procrastinate. Vaccinate. School immunizations are available right now at Forsyth County Department of Public Health. Make sure your child is prepared for next school year by getting their immunizations now. Immunizations are available at no charge for Medicaid and uninsured patients. Call 336-703-3324 to schedule an appointment. For more information, visit forsyth.cc/publichealth. Forsyth County Department of Public Health, promoting health, improving lives.
Back now on Forsyth County Connections, and 'tis the season to garden. So it's just highly appropriate that we bring in an expert on gardening, and more than that, community gardening. We're with Matthew Scoggins. He's Community Garden Coordinator for the North Carolina Cooperative Extension in Forsyth County. Good to see you.
Thank you for having me, Jan.
And now, how can community gardens have an impact beyond just their neighborhoods? Because people talk about, well, I'm going to plant this, and I'm going to plant this right here along our street. How can it have a broad-based impact?
Well, one of the big things we like to see people do is donate to the local food pantries. It really helps out a lot. Like, people don't think their small lot can produce a lot, but sometimes if your harvest is good and you're out there taking care of things, you can really get more than you or even your neighbors can use.
Absolutely, and talking with Eric Aft, who runs the Second Harvest Food Bank, of course, they have this big new facility and with much more capacity for holding produce than they used to. It used to just be canned goods, so now that's even a better reason for what you're advocating for, is to be able to take the produce and put it to some good use. Now, what does it take to start a community garden?
Really, it just takes a space, and it depends on what you're trying to grow, but sunlight is nice, and water is a big consideration to keep in mind, especially if you're in the city and not taking it from like a house nearby.
Right.
So that's something to always, like, where is my water going to come from?
Right.
Always get that.
Now, what problems do people, aside from the water problem, and sometimes that's not a problem, because like you said, it could be near a house, you can run a hose or something. What problems do folks typically run into when they're trying to start a community garden?
Pests can certainly be a big issue.
Really?
We do something called integrated pest management. So the idea is to get out ahead of problems, like put up small fencing, plant companion plants that will keep away insects we don't want in the garden.
Now, what do you mean a companion plant, and how would you keep away a pest? I'm interested in that.
A popular companion plant, especially for things like tomatoes, is marigolds. So the flowers, they have a strong scent to them.
Right.
Not really bad for us, but the bugs that often eat a lot of our plants don't really like them, so it helps keep them away.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay. Other examples? I mean, I guess you don't want rabbits getting into things either, and there's certain things you can do there.
I mean, the Three Sisters style of planting, you do corn, squash, and beans.
Right.
They help fix nitrogen in the soil and things, and that's another form of companion planting that
Now,
keeps pests away.
Right. Can your office help with somebody if a group wants to start a community garden and, hey, we don't have any real resources, we don't have any experience with this? Can you help them?
We can. We often have opportunities at times to give away things people have donated, especially starter plants, sometimes raised bed frames, even soil on occasion. It just really depends on what resources we have, but we do everything we can to get resources to where they're needed most.
And I understand you have, sometimes there's even special events around the gardens, right?
Yes, we do everything from things like rain gardening classes to tree walks and stuff like that. We do a lot of educational opportunities to help people get the most out of their garden space.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned education. I was going to ask you, what are the benefit of these gardens to, say, teachers?
Well, a lot of schools have gardens, and it's a great space to get children outside and learning and get their hands in the dirt in a way that's productive and helps meet some of their standards as far as Common Core.
Is there a particular website or phone number or anything you want to mention where people can find out more about community gardening opportunities?
Sure. Our Forsyth County webpage for the North Carolina Cooperative Extension here at the Forsyth County Center. We have a website, and on there you can find contact information for any of our specialized agents, including me, who can answer a lot of your questions.
I can just tell by the expression on your face, and we didn't rehearse this or anything, but I can tell by the expression on your face that you get a lot of gratification out of this. Why is that?
It's just wonderful to see people helping each other and teaching each other and working together. There's a lot of enthusiasm here in the community, way more than I ever thought when I first took this job.
Right.
And it's just been wonderful to receive that community feedback.
What were you into gardening as a little boy? I mean, how did you catch the bug, so to speak?
I guess a little bit at a time.
Yeah.
Sure, I did garden like at my grandparents' house and things like that. In
Yeah.
high school, I started a community garden. It wasn't even my idea. I just helped out and
Really?
was doing it. But in college is where I really got started.
I think that's great. Down near Dallas, North Carolina. Mm-hmm. All right. Good job. Thanks for all you're doing.
Of course. Thank you,
All
Jim.
right. We'll be right back after this.
Don't procrastinate. Vaccinate. School immunizations are available right now at Forsyth County Department of Public Health. Make sure your child is prepared for next school year by getting their immunizations now. Immunizations are available at no charge for Medicaid and uninsured patients. Call 336-703-3324 to schedule an appointment. For more information, visit forsyth.cc/public health. Forsyth County Department of Public Health. Promoting health. Improving lives.
Every year, 4.5 million young adults between the ages of 18 and 24 visit the ER.
It's every parent's nightmare.
Umergency gives you all the tools you need to quickly and effectively manage your family's emergency. Umergency provides instant access to vital resources, customized to your student's campus and local community, digital consent form, and built-in urgent alert button. Umergency gives you peace of mind when you need it most. Download your Umergency app now.
Back now on Forsyth County Connections as we wrap up our final segment of this half hour. So glad you stayed with us. And now we want to talk about air quality, among other things. And so we're bringing in an expert who was on the show some time ago. Always glad we can grab him away. He's always a busy guy, but we got him back. Minor Barnette is Director of the Office of Environmental Assistance and Protection for Forsyth County. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Before we get going, just remind folks a little bit about your agency. I mean, how would you describe the mission of what your agency does, what it's about?
Our mission is to protect public health by preventing pollution and trying to limit the exposure of our citizens and visitors to environmental pollutants in our community.
Now, what are your agency's regulatory responsibilities when it comes to something like air pollution?
So we regulate the facilities that have industrial processes that release regulated air pollution emissions and also enforce the restrictions on open burning in the county.
How are these kind of things monitored and reported? I think folks might be interested to find out. I mean, how you keep track of these things and then how it's reported.
We operate an ambient air pollution monitoring network where we have technical equipment in Forsyth County in different locations that are measuring and recording and reporting air pollution levels in the outdoor air.
I mean, is that a complicated thing? I mean, do people go around and check certain instruments and things on a daily basis or weekly? I mean, how do you keep up with all this? Sounds pretty complicated.
It is. The instruments are running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in some cases 365 days a year. So it's a continuous ongoing monitoring activity, and we're getting data literally every minute from the network. We're monitoring criteria pollutants that include ground level ozone, particulate matter, oxides of nitrogen, and sulfur dioxide.
Now, obviously, as just a regular citizen, and I'm not scientific or anything, I wouldn't know about particulates, but if I come out of my house one morning and I smell something that's really severe, I mean, should I report that, or do you get people calling in things and saying, hey, I think you ought to check this out, or what? How does that happen?
We do get those calls, and if you smell something that's unusually strong or just unusual compared to what you've normally observed in your area, we would welcome a call from you so we could see if we could determine what it is and where it might be coming from.
Is there we didn't rehearse this or anything, is there a hotline or a regular number or people can get in touch in case they say, hey, I think I smell some kind of gas leak, or I think I smell something coming out of a landfill? I mean, is there a number to call, or are you guys always sort of available, or what?
We're answering the phone Monday through Friday from 8 to 5 and responding to the calls that we receive and following up the next day on calls that come in after hours. But yeah, we would like to hear from people that have any observations that cause them to have concerns.
What are some non-regulatory activities and services that you guys provide?
So we do an air quality forecast every day. We do a pollen report and forecast every day for about 9 months of the year. We help homeowners facilitate indoor testing of their homes for the presence of radon, which is a radioactive gas. We have some educational programs. We have a full-time educator on staff that interacts and engages with students and special interest groups and community groups that are interested in learning more about air quality and how we're all contributing to what's in the air, and we're all breathing the air.
Yeah, well, I appreciate what you're doing. I want to make sure, try to get something up on screen if we can. co.forsyth.nc.us/EAP is a good place to go. And also you can call 703-2440. I think that's a general number that people can get to. Hey, I appreciate that, Miter. Thanks for coming back and doing this.
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure.
You know, speaking of places to visit, you know, throughout the show, you see this, connectwith.forsythcountync.gov. You can go to that for all sorts of information about the show. And the episodes are on YouTube and all sorts of places, and I hope you'll check those out. We do want to thank the team here at Cable 2, especially TJ James, Kevin Wren, our executive producer, Ed McNeil, and Jeff Fabrizio for working on this production, and of course our county manager, Dudley Watts, for all his help. And for you, the viewer, I appreciate you sticking with us. We'll see you on the next edition of Forsyth County Connections.